Hi, everyone. So, as you can imagine, at a conference like this, every detail is sweated. So I want to tell you the backstory behind my sound selection, my song selection. So for those of you that didn't recognize it, that was My Generation by The Who. I chose that song for three reasons. First of all, my wife is a huge Who fan, and needless to say, I had to choose a song from The Who because they are the greatest band ever. Let's just say I've been brainwashed. Secondly, I'm in London, we're all in London, we have to doff our cap to one of the greatest British bands ever. Thirdly, I'm giving a talk about the silver tsunami, which is associated with the brain drain of baby boomers leaving the workforce. And so I have a confession that ties back to the song. I'm a baby boomer, so this is about my generation. Are there any other people who would admit that they're baby boomers? All right, a few out there. So for those of you that sort of keep up on the headlines, we, baby boomers, are accused of many ills. Among them, screwing up the housing market, hoarding housing, and climate change inaction. So it's only fitting that as we leave the workforce, we cause a whole bunch of different problems. But I'm going to break from my generation, and I'm going to give you some solutions to those problems. So that's what my talk will be about today. Let me do a little bit of background and introduction because it informs a lot of my comments. I come out of industry, so I used to sit where you all sit, sort of in the trenches trying to move the needle at a company. I spent 16 years prior to eGain at Wells Fargo, which is a mega bank in the US. I had two roles there. And when I think about it, it was so primitive versus what we're all doing here today at eGain. So my first role was I led a customer experience strategy team that worked across the enterprise. And at a mega bank, everything is mega-sized. So we were trying to improve the customer experience for Wells Fargo's 70 million customers. And the way we did it was so brute force. My team and I would read customer comments, code them in Excel, take the top issue that came up, and go fix that issue, which was typically a complex system issue. We did maybe 2 or 3 fixes a year, barely moved the needle. Okay, but we got lots of kudos because we did fix some tough problems. Nothing elegant, nothing systematic. Then from there, I moved to the contact center, where I was part of the leadership team. It was a 10,000-person contact center. And my job was to move the needle on first contact resolution and handle time. I had 3 tools in my tool belt. One was training. One was coaching, because the conventional wisdom at the time was supervisor to agent coaching is the best change agent. And the third tool in my tool belt was pizza parties, because we all know contact centers run on pizza parties. So I would get, 1 second improvement in handle time, 2 seconds. And by the way, at 10,000 agents, every second's worth $1 million. So there's a lot at stake here. FCR, same thing, 1 or 2 percentage point improvements. And then, as the calendar year would roll forward, it would change. And my team and I quickly realized that it was all seasonal. There was no real change going on. So the levers of power that we had were not connected to anything. So the final bit of my chapter that gets me to eGain is I'm like, this is crazy. This is going to be career death. Let me find a better way. I researched technologies. I saw knowledge management. And like, this is the future. So remember, I'm an old guy. I retired from Wells Fargo, and I came to eGain and have been enjoying the ride since. All right, so let's get into the topic, the silver tsunami, and let's quantify the damage that my friends and I, baby boomers, are causing. So there's 61 million of us, and we'll be out of the workforce by 2030. And there's multiple sources on this. The economic damage is categorized at about $8.7 trillion. And that's due to the knowledge loss, the things like, all the expertise, the who knows where the bodies are buried, the experience, and there's something unique about the baby boomers. And what's unique about the baby boomers is the average tenure at the company is 8.4 years. That's by far the longest tenure of any cohort, any generation now. And in a second, I'll talk about why that is likely never to be repeated. So you not only have sort of expertise in your topic, your subject matter expertise, you also have expertise in the ways of your company. So it's a huge loss. And no industry is exempt. I was at a trade conference for the field service industry. There was a round table of CEOs, and a CEO from a field service company said the number one issue keeping him up late at night is the fact that 30% of his field service workforce was retirement eligible at that moment. And he's like, look, I can't backfill that expertise, and the people aren't willing, the Gen Zs are reluctant to go into my industry. It's sort of, out in the field, you wear work boots, it's physical, it's hard. And so that's common among the industries you see here, is that they don't have that sex appeal of sort of cutting edge technology, et cetera, that gets the Gen Z. So you have a double whammy of expertise is leaving, and you're having a hard time recruiting new talent into the pipeline. And as I mentioned, when a wizened expert like a baby boomer leaves, you lose the how does something get fixed? At that same field service conference, I learned that 50% of issues in the field service, this is from an industry study, are solved by one field service expert calling another to get guidance on how to fix a certain piece of equipment. So that's the how do I fix it? In client-facing industries, it might be who at the client is the expert in XYZ, so you sort of have that client expertise, where is the information reside, et cetera. You also have sort of more concrete business impacts as the know-how walks out the door. You have operational disruptions. If the baby boomer who's been there for a long time knows how to fix a particular issue, the new generation doesn't. You're going to have misplaced fixes, longer downtimes for issues, for equipment, less customer satisfaction. You also have the way that a loss of mentorship, which diminishes the way that information gets transferred. As the mentors all retire, the next generation coming in can't get that sort of guidance, day-to-day, coaching on the field of how to improve their skill set. You'll naturally have compliance risks because the proper way to execute a certain process, that knowledge is lost, and so in some industries, there's a particular way to do something, you do it wrong, you can get fined or bad publicity. And then finally, there's going to be higher training costs because you have to, if you take the traditional method, you have to sort of impart all that knowledge to the next generation in the classroom. That's the old way of doing it. I'll show you the new way, but that's a potentially another cost associated with this baby boom retirement. Remember I talked about the 8.4 years of average company tenure of a baby boomer? That's never going to happen again. You can already see it in the statistics. From 2010 to 2024, there's been a decrease of 11% in the average job tenure of an employee at a company. Multiple reasons. There's COVID, there's the expectations of the younger generation, there's AI. I think we're just beginning to see the impact of AI on people turning over and joining new companies. But bottom line is, companies not only need to think about how do I capture the knowledge that's going out the door, how do I start to capture the knowledge as it's created? Because I'm not going to be creating those subject matter experts that I used to rely on in my company. Okay, so now that we've set the problem statement, this is a costly problem, us boomers doing our work as we do, I'm going to give you a 4-point program for how to solve this problem. And it starts with hub your knowledge. Now, I'll just briefly touch on this because the benefits of this have been laid out by all the speakers today, but it is the foundation of any program like this to capture the knowledge and operationalize the knowledge of the great tsunami, silver tsunami. So part of my role at eGain is I lead a business development team, and we're the first point of contact for folks that are interested in learning more about eGain. So my team and I talk to hundreds of companies every year, and this is sort of the standard picture that we see. multiple silos of knowledge feeding into the content sources. And it's, as you've heard from other speakers, it's really hard when you have multiple silos of truth to keep all of these synchronized, consistent, and accurate and trusted. And let me quote an implication that's not been touched on yet of this type of chaos. So at Wells Fargo, we did a study, deep data study, and we determined that 70% of customers were online before they called the contact center. At Wells Fargo, like at most companies, the online knowledge source was different than the contact center one. So guess what happened? Many, many times, those two policies and procedure stores were out of sync. So customers got inconsistent answers from the digital channel versus the call center channel. So you can imagine the impact to CSAT when you have that type of channel confusion. So in addition, as you've heard, when you sort of try to bolt AI on top of this chaotic situation, it's going to be a classic garbage in, garbage out situation. So this picture again that Ashu touched on, sort of the solution to this is that single source of truth orchestrated by AI and experts. And throughout my talk, I'll show you lots of ways where in our process, in the recommended solution to the silver tsunami, you want to keep the experts, meaning your baby boomers and subject matter experts, legal compliance, in the loop. But what happens when you get this single source of truth at your company? I think the Stacy story of 37% first contact resolution improvement at EE, the handle time improvement there is such a compelling case. If I had done that at Wells Fargo, I'd probably be CEO now. But here's another example from a different industry that also paints a similar picture. So this is a Fortune 100 insurance company. Like all the companies, the prospects I talked to before eGain, they had their knowledge in multiple silos. They had poor user adoption of knowledge tools. They didn't have any AI features in it. They moved to the single source of truth with eGain. And what's interesting about their use case is it's broadly implemented. It's for claims managers, underwriters, sales, and claims. So you've got sort of a broad use case. And the scale of the implementation is large, 30,000 users. And you can see, like all the other stories you've heard, an impressive set of results, 97% search success, 10 times faster speed to answer. And my favorite result that's on here, because contact center agents are a tough crowd, right? I have a whole other soapbox speech I could give how a contact center agent is probably the toughest job in any company. Everything you do is measured, tough targets to hit. They surveyed the agents at this company, and they asked them to force rank their tools, and their knowledge management tool was ranked number one, obviously because it's making this very tough job easier for them. Okay, step one, hub your knowledge. Step two, populate your hub with the knowledge you need. And in this case, the knowledge you need is that knowledge that's in your baby boomer's head. Arvind's going to give a talk later this afternoon, Arvind from eGain, that will go much more deeply into the knowledge method. I'll leave it at the eGain approach to the knowledge you need is you want to get the knowledge you need versus the knowledge you have. Most companies, 20% of the knowledge in your knowledge base will resolve 80% of your issues. So we've built a whole playbook and an approach around this when we implement with customers and as we work with clients to improve their results. But as I mentioned, in this particular case, the knowledge that you need is what's in your subject matter experts, your baby boomer's head. Now, if you ask them to sit down and sort of document everything they know, that's a tough task, especially if you're not someone who writes policies and procedures. We call that the white paper problem. I've got to document my knowledge, blank sheet of paper. Where the heck do I start? So one of the AI tools that we've integrated into our solution is basically an automated AI-enhanced knowledge authoring capability. I'll push play in a second. What you're going to see is with the simple articulation of a subject line and some of the key bullets, the AI will take it from there and gin out based on the tone and the other policies and procedures in your database. It'll create that solid first draft of the expertise that this baby boomer has. And then, because this is just a first draft and we want to keep experts in the loop, we have workflow that'll take this first draft to other subject matter experts, to legal, to compliance, to enhance it, and make sure that it's an excellent policy or procedure worthy of storage in the knowledge source. What we also do when we create this type of a knowledge object is we implement best practices. So it's concise, it's highly consumable, a subheading will appear where a subheading should be, a table will appear where a table needs to be. And I can't tell you how important that is. Again, I'll call back to my Wells Fargo experience. Our policy and procedure warehouse there was something called the virtual library. Super long articles, no tables. People had to read these long articles and figure out what they needed to do. This is light years ahead of that experience and why you get the results that all the speakers have spoken of here with an eGain solution. All right, so after that first draft is completed, like I mentioned just a second ago, we have workflow that will ensure that the right experts enhance, vet, and sign off on that policy and procedure. And there's even things like reminders, right? Because you want to keep this at a brisk pace, and you want to make sure that the approvals and the editing and the enhancement happens. And there's also e-discovery. If, let's just say, God forbid, there's some sort of legal or compliance issue and a particular policy and procedure comes into question, you can look at who created, edited, and signed off on that. All valuable material as you run your operation. So I'm going to be giving case studies throughout because I think case studies really sort of flesh out the story. So this particular case study is super interesting because it deals with a very complex problem with a high opportunity cost. So this is from an oil services company in the US, and they were trying to tackle a really nettlesome and costly problem, which is oil that gets into an oil well. And keep in mind that if an oil well goes down, on average, that's $1 million of profit lost per day. And there was a complicating factor, too, here as well. This was a problem when trying to diagnose it and fix it was very prone to misdiagnosis and misapplication of solutions, which can actually damage the well. So even more economic cost. And so what this company did is got their subject matter, it was a small team, dispersed, nominated sort of the lead person to take a first crack at documenting what's the proper way to diagnose this incredibly challenging problem, and then based on the diagnosis and what the root cause is, to solve the solution. And then that draft was circulated to the other group of subject matter experts. Policy was finalized and implemented. And it became a lifesaver for the company because prior to this group of experts that wrote this policy was dispersed. It's a global company, right? And so it was hard to get them all on sort of the same page, so to speak, helping in any particular situation, given that they were scattered all over the world. So it improved their uptime and helped tackle what is a $40 billion problem for this company. All right. So step one is hub your knowledge. Step two is get that knowledge that you need out of the baby boomers' heads. Step three starts to get at this point of, look, we're not going to have tenure of 8.4 years anymore. Job turnover is faster. We can't wait until people are about to leave or retire to capture the knowledge. We need to capture the knowledge at creation. So there's a philosophy that companies are adopting that a good knowledge management solution can support, which is to fill the knowledge in real time. So in our solution, in the eGain solution, when there's a gap, when a knowledge article does not exist, you get this little button that's circulated that says, hey, there's no particular spot-on policy or procedure to help you here. And remember I mentioned call center agent, toughest job. There's sort of a camaraderie, at least what I've experienced, where they want to help their mates, right? They want to help their mates get good handle time and good results. And so there's this ethos in a lot of companies, well, if there's a gap, I know how to answer it. I've done the research. I'll click that. I'll go ahead and help my mates document a policy and procedure. And what happens in the eGain solution is we take out from the answer that was given, the context of what the problem was, and we pre-populate what the knowledge object should be to resolve that issue. So we do a lot of the work based on the answer that the agent had given to that customer. And then so here you can see the template where the agent actually creates that new knowledge object. And then, which is a consistent theme here, it's a first draft. So because it's something created by agent by default, it'll get routed to other subject matter experts, compliance and legal for vetting and enhancement. But then within a day or two, you've filled a gap with a working answer to a solution that did not have policy procedure guidance to start with. So that's one way to create knowledge as it's needed. The second targets more of the, let's call it the white-collar workforce, desk workers, knowledge workers, whatever you want to say for the sort of the rest of the company outside the contact center, contact centers. And here the problem is actually can be a little trickier. I actually, when I started thinking about this, Googled how can you get people to document their expertise in real time? And the answers, sometimes you get on the internet is good, and sometimes what you get is not so good. The answer that they gave was just make it part of someone's job. They have to spend time documenting the things that they do, or put it part of their MBOs. How many of you think that's something people are eager to do and that process will succeed? Right? No, that's prone to failure. The last thing someone's going to do when they're pushed to urgency to get done other things is to go document their expertise. The other reason that's going to fail is in the age of AI among the white-collar workforce, I think, and I think you would probably agree, that there's worry that, hey, my job could be eliminated. And the expertise that I keep in my head is a bit of job security. If I document it, what's to keep AI from doing my job for me? So you have this natural friction or headwind in the world of the white-collar workforce. So the solution here is you extract the knowledge from the collaboration spaces. That's where this workforce works now. It's in the Slacks, the Teams, the Confluence world, where people are texting each other, talking about issues, documenting products, creating new products, the features of those products. There's all kinds of nuggets in that information. And what you can do, what eGain can do, is we can extract all that chatter and use AI tools to mine what are the true knowledge nuggets that are in this content and turn those into knowledge objects. So it's created in real time and gets away from all the other headwinds you face in documenting the critical knowledge among your white-collar workforce. So this is a slightly different flavor of that sort of broad knowledge creation. But the VA, which is the Veterans Administration, part of the federal government in the United States, is an eGain client, and they use knowledge everywhere for both internally and to serve their constituents, which are veterans. It's a large, complex organization. A lot of veterans in the United States. It's actually the largest healthcare provider in the US, and so it's handling very complex and regulated issues. And because it's such a complex and challenging environment, what they've done is they've empowered 500 knowledge authors to create content. That's a very large sort of base of knowledge authors creating content. And they've done that because of the scale of the usage of their database. Again, big enterprise, big complex issues. And they have 120,000 enterprise users accessing 24 million self-service sessions. It's also available to the veteran stakeholders that they serve. So incredibly complex. And this is a solution that has become even more prominent and important. I'm sure you've all read about the DOGE job cuts. And this is one of the administrations that's been hit by it. So this type of a tool, as all that talent is leaving due to the job cuts, that'll keep the service levels somewhat acceptable. All right, last step, redesign your training. And this gets at the fact that as your baby boomers retire, you now have a challenge of attracting and training and upskilling talent to replace them. And let's be clear, it's not an easy challenge. You've got 11,000 retirements per day on average. And to contrast with that, you have a workforce in the EU that's shrinking. So the war for talent is intense, and the companies to recruit, they have to face the differing issues that this generation has. Us boomers, we were not so picky. You have sort of, I want flexible work schedules, I want remote options, and then in addition to that, you have the headwinds of trying to upskill these folks. The management pool, the middle manager pool that typically would mentor, they're overtaxed as companies do more with less. And apprenticeships in the sort of the white-collar workforce is really a lost art. So the sort of the option here is to retool your training. Here, what I've laid out, it's a little complex, but let me simplify it for you, is by function, a number of common groups that go through training, and then what's the current world? How is training done? And if I were to summarize everything that's in that before column, what I would take it down to is it's a lot of time. Multi-week training you see multiple times. You see boot camps. You see this intensive classroom experience. And I'll quote you a stat. You probably all know this at your hearts, but the stat is from a training group that most people forget 99% of the content that they learned in a classroom 30 days after that classroom session has ended. So this is an approach that is dense, time-consuming, and at its end of day, ineffective. And you can contrast that with a modern knowledge management solution like eGain. What you can do is you can deliver just-in-time training, meaning you don't have to teach an organization about all the policies and procedures and what to do. You just have to teach them how to use the system, and then when they need to know that policy and procedure, it will be delivered to them step by step. So, at one of our North American customer conferences, we had a client get up on the stage and talk about how they used our knowledge management system to do just this, to redesign their knowledge management system. It's a company that's in the blanking on the word. It's the business benefits, the business benefits administration. In the US, we have this complex health code, and there's things like health savings account, and they administer that as well as some payments capabilities. And what they did is they used knowledge management to totally transform their training process. The two main changes that they made were, the first one was, it used to be an 8-week class, and you didn't start actually taking live customer calls till the 7th week. And the problem with that is you're trying to learn all this knowledge in the classroom. You're getting super excited to want to take the calls, the live calls. By the 7th week, this event of taking live calls has been so built up that people get really nervous, and a lot of them sort of crap out. After the eGain knowledge management system, what they did is they started taking live calls in week 1. It builds the muscle memory right away. How do I take a call? It's not as scary. They start to learn what it's like, what they need to learn, etc. So it's a much improved process to move forward the taking of live calls. The second thing that they were able to do, because they didn't have to teach as much content, the training was just in time, they were able to implement a 25% reduction in the actual classroom time. And you can see on the right-hand side there, as there's sort of the 3 steps of a new employee journey, the apply step, getting trained step, and then actually delivering customer service, the comments that the employees made. And this was cited from the executive that spoke at our customer conference. My favorite one is, they talk about the tools that they give their agents as part of the recruiting process, and one of the applicants noted that, like, wow, the fact that you give this to your tools really speaks to how you care about your employees. So this new way of training is not only a more efficient and effective way, but it's also a way to attract talent. So hopefully I've motivated you to sort of tackle this problem of the silver tsunami. A couple of ways to get started. One is, you've heard a lot today about our AI agent. It's a great way because it's easy to implement. You can work with some of the baby boomers, the subject matter experts who are about to retire, allow them to create, in my case, it would be an Evan bot as an example where some of their expertise is documented. There's a whole bunch of other ways that we can help you. I just ask you to seek myself out or other members of the eGain team. There's much of ways that we could start you on the journey to sort of tackling the silver tsunami so your company isn't impacted with the economic damage that I cited at the beginning of this, and you can get ahead of the curve. Thanks a lot.